guys, welcome back to the channel. If you take a look behind me, you'll see there's a little something odd going on with the rear of the Fiero here. And that's because half of my taillights are off. Grab the left side taillight bar, right side is out. The reason it's out is because I'm going to take you guys through a full rebuild of the taillight housing and a repair of the tabs that break on the back. I mean, we've all been there. We know this is almost 40-year-old plastic. The tabs on the back that attach to the lower mount here, sometimes it snaps off. Well, I've jury-rigged a little repair, let's say, for these tabs, and we're also going to go and take apart the entire housing and show you guys exactly how to rebuild them. And one rebuild is going to be using new old stock lenses that I have. I have one set that have never been installed on a car. They are original GM lenses, and we're going to be breaking them out for the first time in almost 40 years and mounting them onto this car. Now, you may ask yourself, why am I going to take apart perfectly good taillights and start changing things? Well, because they are not perfectly good. As Fiero owners, we all know about the dreaded GT delamination, which is exactly what's going on with mine. It's taken almost 40 years, but it's starting. So it's time to change them to maintain the car looking as good as it can be. But apart from installing the new old stock lights, we're also going to be installing the recently discontinued Keith Goodyear lights, taillight lenses. And we're going to be building two complete sets for this car. One is going to be the original dark tinted lens, and the other is going to be the Keith Goodyear lens. Now, in case you didn't know, the Keith Goodyear lens are made to current DOT standards. He did an excellent job making these lights to match today's regulations, which means that they cannot be tinted the way the original ones were, as current regulations do not allow for dark tinted taillights anymore. And since his lights are officially licensed through General Motors, they have to meet current DOT standards. And a lot of people will ask, well, why are his clear and the originals aren't? That's why. Because his meet current DOT standards, and that means that they cannot be darkly tinted. So we're going to get started, and we're going to jump right into these headlights. I want to show you exactly what's inside of them by showing you previously disassembled lights that I have sitting right over there. So come on, let's take a look. Come on with me. Yeah, come on, guys. Before we start taking them apart, I want to show you guys what newly delaminated taillights actually look like. As you can see, I polish my taillights out a lot, which is why they are shiny, which is what makes it a little difficult to see the delamination, but there you go. You see that? It's starting to separate. Now, I'm sure when they built this car, they never expected these taillight lenses to exist 40 years later. Although one would hope that they had a little bit of longevity in mind. But this, with exposure to the sun, is what happens. So I'm going to give you a little look inside so we can kind of explain what's happening. Okay guys, so before we get started, I want to show you what a severe case of delamination looks like. And here we have it right here. You can see how the plastic has started to separate behind the lens. Now, this is a set of taillight lenses that I purchased from eBay a while back, specifically for this rebuild. So the important part is the housing and the guts of the taillight. The lens, not so much. So these are, yeah, they are cracked. They are delaminated. You can see, looks like the plastic just started to get brittle and break up. So, but we're not concerned about that. This is just for an example to show you guys what a severe case of delamination looks like. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take this taillight lens apart so you guys can see what's inside. Those of you guys who own Fieros, and this may be old news to you, but for you guys who are new to the Fiero game, this is what we have to look forward to. Now, taillight lenses are comprised of 4 parts actually, which is the lens assembly itself, the red insert that comprises the PON, and your lighted insert for your stop and brake lamps, directionals, and reverse light, with the 3 different colored lenses. And then the final part is your chrome backing to reflect light back at through the housing from the bulbs. Now these 4 parts comprise your entire assembly. They kind of just sit inside each other, and then the lens just locks them all up. Now it's sealed with butyl tape all the way around to prevent water entry and to hold everything together, which is a really gooey mess when you try to take off 40-year-old butyl tape. I've removed it from here. I still have to do quite a bit of cleaning up on the edges before I go further with this. So we're going to set this aside, and I'm going to show you guys what it looks like on the inside of this lens when the delamination occurs and why it happens. Now, even though this looks like it's 1 part, this is actually 2 pieces. Now, when GM made these, I don't know exactly what the process was, but all of the black portion that you see here is plastic that's fused to the outer smoked lens that you see out here. So even though it looks like it's 1 piece, it's actually 2 parts. Now what happens is that with exposure to the sun and the ultraviolet rays, the 2 pieces of plastic start to separate over the years. And in the case of my car, it took almost 40 years, but it's starting. Don't know the history of where this lens came from, but as you can see, all of this is starting here. Eventually, it'll all lift off of the lens and give you this ugly gray mess that you see up here instead of the bright, shiny black that it's supposed to be. Now, as I said, I don't know what the lifespan was supposed to be of these parts. I doubt it was 40 or 50 years, as most parts aren't designed for that kind of longevity. But it just goes to show you how good these little cars are, that these parts have lasted as long as they did without being replaced. So this is a factory lens, as you can tell by the dark tinting. Now I'm going to pull out a Keith Goodyear lens so we can compare the 2. Okay, now I've pulled out this lens here. Now this is a set of lenses from Keith Goodyear. These were sold as defective lenses, not in any of the way that the plastic is formed, but just in the way the color was applied. Apparently there was an issue with the manufacturing and the color application on the back of this, where you have your Pontiac logo and the black surround, and the paint didn't stick properly. Keith sold these at a heavily discounted rate, and I will be stripping these down and having all of this repainted at some point in the future. Right now, these are just a couple of extras I got. So what I wanted you to take note of is the difference in the area where the lights sit. Now this tinted portion is quite a bit darker than this. Now this is no longer allowed according to current DOT standards. Now Keith made them clear because that is pretty much the only way you can make them now. So a lot of people ask why are his clear while the originals are smoked. Well, that's why. Because with his lenses, current DOT standards apply. And let me show you guys what it looks like with the lit part of the lens install. Okay, now as you can see, with the light shining right on from the camera, shining right on the tail light, there's not a huge difference between the two, but you can see that the Keith ones, the lights, the lens portion of the bulb lens portion, I guess is what I call it, is a little brighter because it doesn't have to go through the tint. Now if we turn the light off on the camera, the lit portion, you can see how much brighter it is. That's not really fair either because we don't have the backing on it. You know what? Let's just put one together really quick here so we can really compare them fairly. There we go. So, as you can see, the Keith lenses, the color on the taillights do shine through just a little bit brighter because of the difference in the tint of the plastic. Now, I prefer the darker, but to have a, crystal clear lens on the back of the car, I would settle definitely for these clear ones because there's really not much of a choice. And as you can see, the lenses are the shape is perfect, everything is perfect about these. I do have a good set of Keith lenses, the ones that were a bit pricier than these, and those are the ones that are going to be going on these housings in order to build a complete second set of taillights. These, as I said, I'm going to have stripped and have the paint reapplied because unlike the Pontiac, which is the original Pontiac lights, which are two separate pieces of plastic fused together, the Keith is just the lens, and then they applied a coating on the inside to mask off the black area, to make the black areas and give you the Pontiac lettering, which in my opinion is probably a better idea than fusing the two pieces of plastic together because there's nothing to separate. The only thing you have is just this paint coating, whatever it is on the inside, some sort of paint, and if anything does ever happen to that, it's basically just strip it and repaint it. So that should be a pretty easy, relatively easy process for any body shop to handle. Or I've heard that you can strip these yourself with any number of paint strippers out there. And we may be doing that on the channel just so you guys can see what happens. But yeah, that is pretty much it. These are original Pontiac lenses, Keith Goodyear lenses. The difference is slight, but it is there. Now, I'm a purist on these cars, and I wanted to have it as original as possible. That's why I will be rebuilding one of these to the original Pontiac tinted standard and have the others as my spares. Now, another thing I want to talk about that we'll be going over in this series, as I said before, the rear tabs. Now, the problem with these rear tabs is that a lot of times, let's give you some light here so you can see what I'm talking about. These tabs here just snap off. Matter of fact, I think this one is broken and it's just there it is. See that? The plastic just cracks and the tab just snaps off. This one still has the majority of the tab on the light, so I can just put this back on and it'll hold the light securely. But if you lose any one of the two on the ends, be in the center, it's not really as important as the two end ones. As you lose two on the ends, your light will either stick out this way or that way. It just won't look right. I've decided to go ahead and try my hand at making a bracket myself. And I came up with this. It looks a little rough. It's the first one I've tried, but it works perfectly. So we're going to be going over how I did this, what I used to make it. It's riveted in place. That's going to be there forever. It's as solid as a rock, and it's using the much thicker base that the original tabs sit in as its mounting point. So this is a much more secure and much more stable mount than what originally came with the car. Now I've reused the original speed clips inside here in order to have the exact same the exact same threaded hole that the original one came with. That involved quite a bit of measuring, and don't worry, we'll talk about all of that. And that have repaired it. Now I can mount these lights back on the car, and they'll sit exactly the way they should have the way they did when they were new. So we'll be going over that too. This is going to be a fun little look at tail light repair. On the Pontiac Fiero GT fastback from 86 through 88. So come on along for the ride, guys. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on here, and you're not going to want to miss it. All right, I'll see you on the next one.